And it is another new day. A rainy day, but still a new day. Anyways, we are moving on to the rear wheel. The tire here, this is still the old tire, and you can see it's not doing so hot, so we're gonna need to replace that. Now, while we've got the wheel off, I'd like to start working on the new chain and sprocket kit. I just received the new kit a couple days ago, and I'd like to install it. And while I've got everything off, I think I'm gonna try to attempt to do some touch-up paint here on the swing arm. There's multiple spots that could really use some love, especially back in here. It looks like, if I had to guess, somebody was changing the brake fluid, judging by the proximity to the brake line here. And for those of you that know, brake fluid will destroy paint. So I'm guessing that's probably what happened, but I'd like to clean this area up a little bit. We're gonna work on that. I also got the chain slider, which is what this little bolt is for. We're gonna install that today. A lot of stuff to do. I'm gonna have to pop this guy off, which means I'll probably have to pop this guy off too, so we can access the front sprocket. A lot of hoses in my way, but shouldn't be a very big deal. We'll make it happen. All right, so after a lot of hammering, finally got the rear wheel out. We can see it is pretty filthy. Definitely time for a new rear sprocket, but most definitely time for a new rear tire. So now that this is out of the way, not only can we clean the wheel real well, but also I'm gonna have to break the chain, get the chain out. We're going to tape off everything and then remove some of these stickers. And I've got some, yes, it is rattle can, but I'm not removing the entire swing arm and having it professionally done. So this is the next best thing. I've used this before. It comes out looking pretty good. I've got some of this VHT epoxy paint, pretty heavy duty stuff. I've used it on other bike projects, and it's a pretty good match to the swing arm. And you'll notice the swing arm is actually a different color than the frame from the factory, just a slightly different shade. Or maybe it's because I've polished that one up real nice and this one's still dirty. Either way, this looks awful. I'm gonna peel all the stickers, hit it with a coat of this. Same up in this area. I'm gonna try to mask things off. And hopefully by the time all that's cured, we'll have a new tire on here and a new sprocket. But I'm also gonna have to start removing some things up here in the front to install the front sprocket. So organizing myself here, I think I need to go get a chain breaker, remove the chain, then I can really mask things off, because I don't wanna try to paint around this chain. It would be a complete mess. So chain breaker while I'm out, pick up new rear tire. When I come back, mask everything off, paint it. While it's drying, install new rear sprocket, install new front sprocket. Once that's cured, reinstall the wheel, install new chain, and we're good. All right, guys, so I did end up getting some new rubber for the RC51. I went with the Dunlop GPR, the Sport Max 190 5017 tires. It's a pretty good budget tire. This being a bike build that I'm not keeping for myself, I went with an affordable tire that was still safe for the next owner. Now, a concern that I do have is I bought a 520 kit, and the kit, looking at it a second time, came with a 104 link chain. And with this being an SP2, they normally will run a 106 link chain. But I'm wondering if the combination of the sprockets I've got, which I believe is 15 in the front, 40 in the rear, and then the 190 50 rear tire, if that will allow me to run the 104. I believe this is a 106. I'm going to count it out just to make sure. but it had a lot of slack, and I believe it was pretty far back on the notches. So I'm kind of crossing my fingers that it will work. Otherwise, I'm gonna have to go get a longer chain, which would be annoying. So let's go ahead and start by removing the existing chain, taking off the front sprocket, and then we'll focus on doing some touch up on the swing arm, and hopefully this chain fits. All right, so we used our Stockton chain breaker tool. I picked this up from Cycle Gear yesterday. I was gonna get the one from Harbor Freight, but they had an open box one that appeared to be missing the rod that went with it. And I had this rod from another tool kit that I bought, so I knew it wouldn't be an issue. And I also bought the chain installer tool, the little chain press tool, both of them for about 30 bucks. So it's a good tool I'll be using on future builds. But we got the pin out, we got the chain broken. The bike is currently in 6th gear for when we install the new front sprocket. I need to depress the clutch lever and zip tie it down to the left handlebar. That way we don't have to bleed the hydraulic clutch line after we're done installing the front sprocket. I need to remove the slave cylinder. Let's see if I can bring the camera over here. There is a slave cylinder right here that I need to remove in order to get to the front sprocket cover. So I'll remove that first, pop the cover off, we'll install the new front sprocket, and we'll go ahead and remove the chain. All right, so a couple surprises after removing the slave cylinder and the front sprocket cover. For one, this was jammed inside the front sprocket cover. Probably a reason why the chain sounded so horrible and was doing so many strange things when riding it. And the other strange thing is there appears to be this rubber boot stuck on the inside of the cover, and it looks like the threaded rod, you know, sort of gouged its way in and just spun a hole inside this rubber grommet. I don't think that's supposed to happen, but the other confusing thing is there's no nut on this. How do I remove the front sprocket with no nut? And what is going on with this rod? I have no idea. This looks like some sort of a washer that is fused on. And yeah, so I'm a little confused. I'm gonna have to go online and do some research about this. So this is about the weirdest thing I've ever seen. At first I started getting a little bit nervous because when you look at this, it looks like there's something all sorts of messed up with the main drive threaded rod. And I'm thinking to myself, how in the world, A, did the sprocket stay on? B, I can't even put into words what could have happened. So I'm looking at this thinking, okay, why in the world is this boring into this rubber standoff? And why is this rubber standoff here? I'm gonna have to see why. But thank God I cut through all the rubber, and there is in fact a nut there. There's no damage to any sort of threaded rod, so that was a huge relief. But it bored basically a perfect, you know, it almost fused itself to this rubber, you know, whatever material this was. And I'm looking, and even laying this in here, I really have no idea how this would have happened, other than I have no words, no idea. So you can see it's been a while since I've done a chain and sprockets kit. I had to put the chain back on, and I basically looped it around the end of my rear stand and pulled one way while twisting with the breaker bar to break this guy free. Typically this is going to be a lot easier if you leave the rear wheel on and even have somebody sit on it. The bike's also in 6th gear, so that helps, but with the chain off and just spinning it, it was just basically spinning the main drive, which wasn't allowing me to loosen it. But putting the chain back on allowed me to break it free, and as you can see, we've got it out. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull the front sprocket, and then we're gonna count the links on the chain. All right, so I just counted out the chain that was on the bike, and it is 106 links all the way down. So looking at my kit, it is a 520 race conversion kit, brand new. And I called a local Honda dealer and I asked them what setup they run for 520s on an RC51. And they said that the setups that they sell are for the 520 are 15 teeth in the front, 40 in the rear, and it comes with a 104 link chain, which is exactly what I have. And they said that was for a 2003, the SP2. So even though the SP2 has a longer swing arm, I guess they're saying that the 104 chain will work. I told them that the forums were saying otherwise, but either way, just for a fun fact for them and their catalogs, I'll let them know if it fits. So we're gonna go ahead and proceed with the 104 chain, and if it doesn't fit, we just go buy a longer chain and resell the 104. But before we do that, I'm going to remove the exhaust on this side. I'm gonna loosen up the fastener securing the brake line. I'm going to remove maybe even the passenger foot pegs too, the chain guard, probably the rear sets as well, and then the chain guard up here too. I'm going to attempt to sort of isolate and clean the swing arm, and then I'm gonna do probably a test of the VHT paint just to see color-wise how it looks. I don't really use this rear stand anymore, and it's obviously an aluminum stand, so I'm gonna hit it with a couple coats of the VHT, and then we'll see how it matches up with this. And if it looks good, we'll go ahead and proceed with it, and if not, I'll just probably end up doing some touch-up paint or covering it up with stickers. All right, so I've got the swing arm up on jack stands in preparation for paint. The rear stand was getting in the way a little bit around the spool, so I figured jack stands might be a better option. But before I make the commitment to actually paint this, I want to see what the new chain slider looks like to see how much of this it actually covers, because I'm still debating just covering up this spot with a sticker and calling it good. So let's unbox the chain slider I got and see how it looks. All right, let's go ahead and open up this chain slider box and see what it looks like. All right, so here we go. As you can see, OEM Honda part. And let's go ahead and take it out of the bag and take it over to the motorcycle. And oddly enough, I think part of this is what was stuck inside the front sprocket area. So it all makes sense now. All right, so when we hold the new chain slider up to the swing arm, we can see that it's basically going to cover up the entire area up here that has lost paint, as well as the areas here and here. So that means really the only areas that need major touch-up are right here and right here. So, like I said, it's not going to be cost-effective to remove the entire swing arm and repaint it. This is a, quote-unquote flipper project, so, maximizing the profit margins is key here. So the question is, can I make it look good? A, by putting a sticker over this. I hate stickers. I hate putting stickers on. But if there was nothing up there that needed to be fixed, then I probably would just throw a sticker over this like they did. However, given that we've got a pretty major mess up there and a major mess over here, I think I'm going to do some spot touch-up and see if that works. All right, guys, I used some of the 600 Scotch-Brite to just sort of scuff up this area, and I went and did a little test paint of the VHT, and let me adjust the lighting here. In my opinion, it's way too dark. It does not match very well. So what I've decided to do is I'm just gonna get a flat black touch-up paint, and rather than trying to spray the entire swing arm as best I can, I am just going to do a little touch-up. I even grabbed a permanent marker and just wanted to see what that looked like over here. It's gonna get covered up anyways. And I'm like, you know what, that'll probably pass. So I'll probably do the touch-up in this area, touch-up over there, and then most likely get a sticker to cover the majority of the touch-up. And up there is just not a very visible area, so it shouldn't be a huge deal. That touch-up pen I think is like 10 bucks at Advanced Auto Parts, and that's cheaper than what the paint would have cost anyways. Yes, in case you saw this on the floor in the last clip, I did even experiment brushing on the VHT on the aluminum rear stand that I've got, and that looked terrible as well. So that's why we practice before we do it on the real thing. All right, so I grabbed some of that little pen touch-up paint, and honestly, it doesn't look that great. You can see clearly where I've touched up the areas that were silver before from the exposed aluminum. I'm not really gonna bother with anything up there because it's all. So here is the installed chain slider, and I also to 6.5 foot-pounds for those that are curious. It was really easy to install. It had a split, so you could just wrap it around from the inside. Looking all over, there were other areas that it's been touched up by the previous owner too. Christmas tree push pins on either side, and it pops right into place and just get a fresh coat of paint. However, for this project, I will not be doing that. If this was my personal bike, I most certainly would. Now we're going to move on to, I cleaned all this out. This was really nasty from before. You can be profitable on a bike. Grease this rod up for the clutch. As much as I hate to do it, use a couple of stickers to hide the few little blemishes on the swing arm and move on to finishing up the project. So far, we're staying mostly within budget, and I think it's going to be looking pretty good when it's all said and done. I talked to the painter today. Things are going well. I should be getting the parts back within the next couple of days. But for now, let's wait for the paint to dry. We will reinstall the chain slider, and then we'll start putting on the rear wheel and the new sprockets. So here is the installed chain slider, torqued to 6.5 foot-pounds for those that are curious. It was really easy to install. It had a split so you could just wrap it around from the inside, and a couple of press fit little Christmas tree push pins on either side, and it pops right into place and it looks great. Oh, that looks so ugly. I can't wait to cover it up with something. Anyways, now we're gonna move on to, I cleaned all this out. This was really nasty from before. I'm going to grease this rod up for the clutch, and let's install the front sprocket. For those that are curious, here is the stock front sprocket, I would assume. This was mounted to the inboard side, this was outboard. This is what we are replacing it with. It appears to have RK markings on it, and it is a 520 15 tooth. I believe this was a 16 tooth. Just a little dab. All right, so I'm going to put it with the logo facing outboard. Here is the washer that went with the stock setup. And here is the screw. Now I'm going to wait to torque this down to spec until I have the chain and the rear wheel on with the new rear sprocket. That way I can take advantage of the tire being on the ground while I torque it. The bike is still in 6th gear, but as you saw earlier in the episode, that wasn't enough. I had to actually put the chain back on, loop it around my rear stand, and hold that while using a breaker bar to get this thing off. So I've got all the torque specs printed out, so we will torque this thing down to spec, but let's get the rear wheel back on and the chain on. All right, moving on to the rear sprocket. Here was the OEM, or at least the sprocket that was on the rear wheel. And here is the new Vortex. This is a 40 teeth sprocket. And you can see it's in much better shape, very lightweight. This feels like a steel sprocket. This is definitely an aluminum sprocket. This will wear a lot faster, but I couldn't beat the deal for the chain and sprockets kit. So we're gonna lay this on. We are going to apply some Loctite and then torque all the nuts down to spec. Let's do it. Just like that, it is the next day. I got a little frustrated trying to install the rear wheel. I did get it a few takes just after the last one, but I found that the trick ended up being getting just the right number of wood blocks under here to align the axle perfectly. And once everything was aligned well, everything fit together, you know, like a glove. Now the chain is not on yet, and I haven't adjusted the tension bolts, so the thing is free to wiggle and jiggle. So I'm going to start by aligning the both sides of the adjusters to the same notch, and then we're going to test the theory of whether a 104 link will work on the SP2 swing arm with the 520 conversion kit. Again, this is a 15 tooth in the front, 40 in the rear, and 104 links. So here is the RK motorcycle chain and sprocket kit, the 520 race conversion kit. We've got the sprockets on, and let's go ahead and unbox the chain. We counted the chain that was on there, and it is 106. Some guys in the forums were saying, oh, it was about a half a link too short with a 104 on the SP2. And this is a XW ring chain. Go ahead and open the chain up. Very nice, very nice. Moment of truth. Let's throw this chain over our sprockets and see if it fits. Alright folks, well I have some bad news. The forums are correct. Even with the wheel placed at the very first notch in the adjustment settings, you can see we are in fact about a half a link too short to fit it. And that is our max situation right there. So definitely a 105 link would have been okay, but 106 is definitely the sweet spot for the SP2. So if you see a great deal on a chain and sprockets kit and it's a 104 link, only buy it if you have an SP1, because the SP2s will not fit, unfortunately.